with Parashas Behaloscha. This week we will be discussing the rock of Jethro and the following topics and principles. In the Parasha we'll find the following concepts intertwined throughout the stories, and this is what is going to revolve around what I call the rock of Jethro. The essence of the Torah, from one perspective, I know it's a big statement to say that it's the essence of the Torah, but on one particular foot or direction, we'll cover the essence of the Torah. What is Mazel? Big topic. Miracles of God, 7 laws of Noah, and their relationship with conquering the land of Israel. The Torah, in each location, each story, each letter, each miracle, as what I call Torat Ger, the Torah of the Ger. What do I mean by that? Just as every Ger in the Torah is a unique learning, every piece of Torah, period, is a unique learning. And we will discuss the relationship of Moses and Jethro through the revelation of the angelic man, the Kruv, right? A Kruv, the angelic man, is an example. Abraham, when he passed all of his tests, became a Kruv. Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, David are your most basic examples, along with Enoch, Hanoch, and Elijah, Pinchas. And all of these concepts will funnel into a concept called the rock of Jethro. And with that, we can now begin. So I forgot to put my notes. This one issue. Let's go ahead and start with that issue. Make it out of the way. It wasn't so much part of the article. I want to make this just a kind of a note, as I mentioned in the introduction, that we're going to define Mazel. So it's a bit in the article, but I didn't make it in my notes. A note to explain it, so we'll do it now. Everybody wants to know what is Mazel, right? It's a big topic. I bring it up a lot. Everybody knows that. And the naysayers are quick to point out that Jews don't believe in astrology and divination, and that people that are interested in names and Kabbalah and all the things that we talk about, basically, they jump the gun too quick. And they call that astrology and the stars, and we're above that, and therefore why am I teaching Mazel? Beside the point that everything I just said is completely wrong, there's lots of Torah written on Mazel, and how it is not with the stars, how it is not astrology, how it's not divination, yada yada yada. And through the last 3 years or whatever that I've been teaching about this, we have defined it a million ways by bringing examples of rabbinic writing to show what it is. One of the biggest examples is in the book of Isaiah, chapter 41. Right? The commentary, I believe it's the Radak, I think it's Radak, I can bring it on location, explains how every star above has a name and number. Every member of Israel has also a name and number, and as we brought in the first 2 Parashas of the book of Bamidbar, everyone's purpose and Mazel, again that word Mazel, purpose, not destiny, but function, soul root is in their name and number. But again, the word that everybody's bothered by is, what is Mazel? The reason why people are bothered is because it happens to be similar to Mazalot, the constellations. But again, it's a very different word. So here it is, set in stone, if you will, the definition of Mazel that I think everybody will find interesting. We know that in the upper worlds, blessing and bounty comes to this world by means of a coming down from the upper worlds. That's basic Kabbalistic thought. I don't see anybody bringing anything contradictory to this. People may reject Kabbalah, but that's their prerogative, and that's a much bigger fish to fry than the word mazel. But in any Kabbalistic model of the universe, you will find the concept of blessing and bounty coming into our world called Asiya, the world of doing, from the upper world of emanation called Atzilut. And I talk about how in our world, one can have an experience of perceiving mazel coming from God. It's been explained before that mazel is the dripping or the pouring of that into our world. Here's the definition. To alleviate all, complex schemes and systems to explain and try to explain something how one person can see it and another person can see it. Here it is. Just like Abraham, we say had the attribute of kindness, chesed. And we know that there's one of the 10 attributes above called kindness. Thus, when Abraham was in this world, he would personified kindness above, and he was kindness below. Thus, if you were around Abraham, you would perceive what that attribute on high is. That was a form of his holiness that he brought into the world. Thus, when the Torah was written, it encapsulated that power of Abraham forever. And as we know there was in Abraham, there is kindness. In our world, there is part of at least a 1/10 of bounty coming into our existence at all times called kindness. When Abraham met Melchizedek in the Temple Mount, it says he gave him 1/10 of everything. Well, there you have it. Abraham became synonymous with kindness. I guess you could also say Shem, Melchizedek, also became 1/10 of everything. As the Zohar says, who gave to who? It's ambiguous in the language which one really gave to the other one. Shem's place became Keter, the crown, the top of the tree of life per se. Which brings us to our definition of mazel. Mazel is one's revelation of malchus, which is the Hebrew word for kingship, in this world. That's it. Right? Just like Abraham was a revelation of kindness, as it was above in this world, malchus, or let's just refer to it in its Hebrew, malchus, the 10th and bottom of the emanations, or all 9 above, funnel into it. All levels of blessing and bounty come into our world through malchus. We are expected to have revelation of malchus. That when we pray, we meditate and connect to that level. The kingdom of the Messiah will come from that level. Even the Gerim are expected to reach that level. That is the definition in the Zohar of a Ger Tzedek proper. Whether it's a convert, not a convert, any Ger Tzedek really is the embodiment of malchus. Thus, everyone is expected to get there. When you have a revelation of malchus, thus you are the embodiment of it in this world, or let's say, it's like malchus. You're not literally it as it is above. You are like it. So therefore, you can experience blessing and shefa. Shefa is bounty coming basically into your world. When you have a revelation of malchus, everything you perceive will be a blessing and of shefa, bounty. You have a revelation of that attribute. That revelation is mazel. That is the definition, right? All the things that are dripping down, the blessings and the bounty, it's dripping down. You are having a revelation of the pool of that dripping, and the flow like a river of that bounty. Thus, the mazel experience you have is that. I hope that clarifies for a lot of people. Does that clarify for you? Okay, now that's out of the way. We mentioned the essence of the Torah. Everybody can. This is a who doesn't want to find the essence of the Torah? Right? You have this rabbi says it's this. This one says it's that. Here is an essence of the Torah that is really not one to argue with. It's just kind of logical. So it's not the essence on every level. It's like it's an essential of the Torah. The Torah is everything that happened in the Torah. The life of Moses. That's it. Right? Moses dies in the very last verses. He lived in the last 4 books. And the first book was nothing more from this angle of giving a hakdama, an introduction to the life of Moses. We even have a Moses name read in Genesis, according to the Vilna Gaon, where it says, "What is man that his flesh should be 120 years? In his flesh is the gematria Moses, 345. The Kabbalistic text will claim that Moses is a reincarnation of Seth or Shem or Noah, relationships with Adam and Abraham. So the whole book of Genesis gives a deeper spiritual context to what will become the life of Moses. Thus we have Moses as the Redeemer. He's a Messiah figure. He's the Torah giver. He's the prophet. The 5 books of Moses are the life of Moses. Perforce, Moses dies at the end of the book, and that was the Torah. Right? Moses lived the most Torah life possible. And out of Moses came the tools that we will eternally have to understand that book. The words, the concepts, the codes, the keys, whatever he lived, we have been studying how to understand his life. And it had to be this way. Moses couldn't write just a very simple book. Here's like a Facebook, right? The Torah is not Facebook. With selfies with Moses. Look, here I was at the Red Sea, everybody. Here's what happened with Egypt. Oh, here I am again. Me and my friends. It doesn't work that way. It was a very fundamental 4-step fractal that is the essence of everything in Tanakh. This is brought down in the Zohar's conclusion. Ready? The 4 steps we can see in Reuven and Joseph. Right? Reuven threw Joseph in the pit, hoping to bring him out. Reuven mounted his father's bed and got punished. And Reuven was redeemed by Moses at the end of the Torah. May Reuven live and not die. This is every story. Try yourself. You'll see it works. I had good intentions. Reuven had good intentions. I had to deliver those intentions from a shady place. Reuven threw Joseph in the pit, hoping to bring him back later. I was punished for my actions. Reuven was brought by Mazel, right, by that bounty of God, to come to mount his father's bed, and he was destined to die and be left out of Israel. Moses brings him back. The end of the Torah, Reuven was redeemed. Thus, all truth must come from a shady place. Let's say not from Atzilus, but from at least the world of Bria, a step below it. We say that the Torah, begins with a Beit. The Bereshit stands for Bria. It's a level of Klippa, right? The level of Klippa is there's a shell on the Torah that we have to learn how to break in and get the light of the Torah. And when the Messiah comes, the Torah will be revealed as it is in its sublime state in Atzilus. Thus, we have to go through the tree of knowledge of good and evil to get to the tree of life. And again, that is Zohar proper in every respect. The concept, life and death, good and bad, kosher and not kosher, is very Bria. Our world, spirituality, is coming from Bria. And of course, the job, as I explained with Mazel, is to get to Malchus, where we can begin to fathom the unadulterated blessings of God. The Torah thus began, it closed, it has covers, and once it's closed, we can begin to look historically of what happened. Right? Out of the Torah will come children of Israel. If you look carefully, you'll see a history of Gerim. You'll see a historical Israel through the various exiles. Right? You'll hear about a temple built by Solomon. You'll hear about a temple mount. You'll hear about Sennacherib scattering everybody in Israel. You'll hear about the Babylonian exile, Persian exile, return to Israel's soil, where they will build a second temple, and it will go through and endure a Greek exile. Then you will be banished again and destroy the temple again, led through the Roman exile. You'll find the Talmudic period, Jews around Babylon, modern-day Iraq. Europe will begin to get a trickle of Jews. The Sephardic lands will become Jewish. You have various empires coming through. The Turks will come through. The medieval times will come through. Finally, you'll have recent history, a state of Israel, Jews back on the land. America will take the mantle of Edom, and we will come to where we are currently, which, as we're all born in the relative near this time in our lives, everyone's basically born in the last however many years, we are indoctrinated into witnessing a Jewish people, a land of Israel, a Torah, a history filled with gems, and a global waiting for the Messiah. Thus, there is an extension that came out of the Torah, and there's the Torah itself. We are not privy of living in the time of the Torah. The people that lived in that time were a special group that were privileged to live in the time, in the proximity of Moses. As I wrote in the article, what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas. What really went on in the Torah's 5 books, we don't know. One can make a claim that that is the essence of the Torah also. That we're not supposed to know what happened, really. Because it's impossible. It's as if God threw us an impossible text and said, here, go break your head over this for nearly 6,000 years. Or let's say from the time when Moses died, let's see, the Sinai was 2448, he was 80, so 2488 he would have died. So basically from the 3,200 years approximately, 3,300 years, we have been trying to understand what that book is saying. And no one's got it right. We have, 4 levels of exegesis. The simple meaning, the hint, the allegorical, and the secret. And we have a tradition coming from Moses himself. We have an explanation of the laws, commandments, customs, ways of ritual, history, character development, Kabbalistic universe, etc., etc. And these are all kind of groping at the gates of the Torah. But what really happened? That's a level that probably has been unearthed by one man in history, and that is King David. Which is why King David has the rights of the Messiah in his kingdom. Yet even David himself was locked out and is not in that book. We all go through time wishing we were in the book, relating to the book. The book has been the #1 bestseller on the New York Times list since day one, figuratively. The Bible is the book. And all these years later, we still don't know what it is. The goal is to chew on that book for all these years And eventually we will have lived a life of the tree of life mentality, of really the richness and quality of life. So the more we live, we can get into the text itself and begin to understand what actually happened. That's the goal. And it's God's way of saying, you were never meant to get by in this world. This world was not for you in any way, shape, or form. It only exists that the Torah can be written, lived by its inhabitants, and studied for the rest of time, and built up by the book of Genesis. You'll try until the end of time to understand it. Religion will come out of that book. Everybody trying to understand eventually will realize that even male and female don't understand really the other person. No two people communicate well. That's what the Torah's secret message really is. That you're all wrong. No one gets it. Something did happen in those 5 books. The verses do tell a story. And it is possible to know. But you must have lived the duration of time to get that story. The Jews cannot do it alone. Right? It is impossible for a Jew to be in a million places at once. Impossible. Elijah tried it. He said, if I become a Kruv, can I then be good enough to know the Torah's contents? God said, let's try it out. You will go to every circumcision. You'll be in so many places. And it's still not enough. For this reason, there are Jews and Gerim. The Gerim are those walking the earth with open eyes, watching the creation, being those B'nai Elohim that we discussed. What is B'nai Elohim? Not judging you're this, you're that. Simply giving your eyeballs to God, letting God watch His revelation revolve. So that when the Jew and the Ger discuss Torah, all of a sudden all those collections of visions can come through. Suddenly the Jew has millions of eyes as he sits and guards and protects the land, being the priest of the nations. God would formulate a perfect system. If the Jews would have the Torah, the Gerim would be all over the world giving feedback of this entity called life. Theoretically, the two can work together and piece together what is life about to be able to understand what is in the 5 books of Moses. By definition, it cannot be a dogma, a one-language system, or a knowledge that comes from one language. It must be universal and global. You might call those the sparks of the breaking of the vessels that contain the ability to formulate what is in that Torah. When we reach the time of the end of days, which God willing we're close, life will have been lived, and people can begin to fathom what the Torah is on about. The message is, chew on this for a while, you won't get it. You'll get a lot, but you won't get the proverbial it. Because in the world to come, it's God's way of saying, get it now, because there you're expected to know how to communicate and get along. Thus, in the end of time, all the sparks will have been redeemed, and then we will have enough data, raw data, to be able to put together and formulate what the book was on about. with cooperation. As I was saying, the world to come expects everybody to have already achieved the knowledge of how to get along. In this world, you were not expected to get along. It would be nice, and it does bring the Messiah when you do get along. But just know it was nearly impossible, is the basic idea. The Tower of Babylon did its job to make sure of that, as everyone's language was confused. To make sense out of the 5 books of Moses, we must work together and understand what is the essence of life. That is the tree of life. That is the rejection of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Again, on one foot, you can say that is the essence of the Torah. It was a book to let everyone argue and fight and kill and get all these things, establish a world of righteousness. And at the end of days, they would come together and figure out to understand what is the content of the Torah. One of the biggest examples of such a concept of how to understand different points of scripture, of text. The nature of the miracle. What is a miracle? What are Hashem's miracles? Then you have the apocalyptic literature. We're going to have sulfur raining down, 3 days of darkness, all these things. Very miraculous. Yet King David in Psalms writes, with commentaries, suggesting that's not really what the prophets are on about. The prophets are speaking allegorically. And when the times of prophecy will happen, we will recognize exactly how the prophecies were true. The Ramban commentary offers 2 vehicles of understanding miracle. Number 1, do we want or believe or have, whatever it is, school of thought, miracles happen in nature? An above nature scenario, but within nature, i.e. harnessing mankind? Or are miracles totally negating the way the world operates? That God is able to institute a novelty into the creation itself. Because God says, I am as I shall be. I'm not bound by any system. I can do whatever I want. Or does God operate within the system He creates? This is the idea of God looked into the Torah when He created. And God only performs supernatural miracle within the context of His creation. I think a very simple way of explaining which one is which can be said like this. This is from the context of what a Kruv would say. If I am a miracle, if I myself am miraculous, then the Torah need not be a miracle. That is, I think, King David is the essence of that. King David does not report miracles at all. When you learn the Psalms of King David, he's a man. And he is the essence of Kruv. Very, very human. He relates to God, never asks God to supersede nature. And within the creation itself, which can be identified as the kingdom of David, the guy never lost. God was always there. David was victorious within the boundaries of nature. The other side is to say, if I'm not a miracle, if I'm not miraculous, then I need the Torah to be that miracle. The Ramban suggests that the natural miracle is the greater sanctification of God. If God can do the miracle in creation, then we see that God is truly great. He can be a God of this world. We know God can just do stuff. But can God do stuff with my frail bones? So that's the idea. When a man becomes miraculous, he has betachon, trust in God, perfect faith. As if to say that when man joins with God, God will be a God unto him. Which is why God wants the Gerim to come back into Torah. As King David says, when the Gerim come back, and there's a world filled with B'nai Elohim, the Gerim are attached to that name when they come back, God says, then I will start being God openly, overtly in the world. The miracles will come back. And again, does that mean we're going to have miracles superseding nature? Or does it mean that mankind will be doing miraculous things? Which is all starts, number 1, get along. 2, understand the Torah. 3, live the Torah. 4, start becoming biblical themselves. And again, to follow suit with the Ramban, we look into the nature of conquering the land of Israel. We know that Israel, the nation of Israel, was created to go and march onto the soil of the promised land, eradicate the 7 nations, establish a king, temple, messianic victory, and we all live happily ever after. A couple of questions that will come out of this. Do we have a responsibility to make Dayton, Ohio a 7th law of Noah city in America, the country of? Is that our job? Right? Do Jews need to travel all over the world making the 7 laws on the whole world? The Ramban seems to think no. It is not our job to conquer the whole world. It is our job to conquer the land of Israel. That is a mitzvah. And now, inside that concept, do we conquer the land of Israel with rifles and machetes and AK-47s? Or is there another way? Is there another way? The answer is there is another way. And that is the historical way. When we read through the book of Joshua, and we get an accurate example of history. Now, this is not to say that Israel did not go to war. We know for a fact Israel had many wars. But in terms of conquering the land, do we want bloodshed? Is that what Israel does? It would appear not. As is explained, one way of conquering not only the Canaanites, but Amalek as well, is to give them the 7 laws of Noah and make them Noahites. Or in this case, Gerim. Haman, the antagonist from the Purim saga, his offspring were found learning Torah in Bnei Brak, says the Talmud. In the same passage that deals with Naaman, who also, his descendants learned Torah. Then King David was on record that to get rid of Amalek, the best way is through laws of Noah. To make them Gerim. Once they're a Ger, they've lost that level that needs destroyed. The Canaanites, once they're Ger, they've lost that level of destruction. The Talmud Bavli backs this up. Why is it said that if a Jew destroys or kills an animal of a Canaanite, the Jew does not need to pay retribution? Everyone says that means the Jews can steal from the nations, right? It's a double standard. It's Jewish thievery. Bava Kama explains, we cannot have idolatrous money coming into our currency. We live together in proximity here. We live by the Torah. We believe that the Torah is holy, holier than your Avodah Zarah system. We believe that Hashem is the true God and your plethora of gods are not real. And we're willing to fight it out over it, if need be. And we are taking possession of what God tells us is the Holy Land and setting it up to be a holy land. Which one need not look very far to see how this is not parallel with today's version of Aliyah. Thus, at that time, the Jews are prepared to do what it takes to win over the land. But what the Talmud offers is, we would like them to take the 7 laws of Noah. Most importantly, that when they do, if there is civil disputes, when we can all engage, as it says in the Parasha of this week, Shlach, not this week, we're actually behind this article, but the actual Parasha read today was Shlach, one Torah will be for you and for the ger. And that goes worldwide. Right? Once we have this concept, anybody in the world can become a ger. So when there are monetary issues, or whatever issues, it comes under one Torah. I also saw a very nice commentary today. I'll say this as an addition. What does it mean one Torah will be for the native and for the ger? I think it was the Evan, I don't know who is it, I forget which commentary it is. It says, Ketoras Chatas. Right, if you look by a sin offering in the Torah in Vayikra, it says this is the Torah of the Chatas. Meaning there's a really one way of performing the ceremony and the delivery of the Chatas. And we know that not only Jews can bring the offerings, non-Jews can too. So when the Torah law is applicable to everybody, there's a Torah of a way to do it. So that's what the Torah means. One Torah will be for everybody. When we are both engaged in the same command, the same instruction will be used to facilitate and execute that function. Thus, the Gerim worldwide, the Gerim around the land, would function under one common law, where it's applicable, that law. And the law is not the same for everyone. Kohanim are not the same as Levites. Levites are not the same as Israelites. Israelites are not the same as converts. Converts are not the same as Gerim. Gerim are not the same as Ger Toshavim. We all have what we do. 7 laws, many laws, 613, women are exempt. Kohanim have to have a separate set of laws. Levites, have a function in the temple. We all take our place in the Torah. But one Torah should govern, basically, at least the land. And if that happens, it can be said it'll be easy for the whole world to operate under those statutes. Now that happened historically. That's how it went down. Notice above a comment, it doesn't say take an AK-47 and shoot everybody up. That it looks like by the flow of time, the 7 laws was the way of doing that. Now there's a major consequence here. If the non-Jewish peoples were conquered with 7 laws of Noah so that the Jews could function in the land, you're going to have a large history of many Gentiles who consider themselves part of the covenant of Israel. Once they are a part of the covenant of Israel, they're going to have realized, why would I go back? Right? This conquering is not even a conquering. It's like shaking somebody up. Hey, wake up. The Torah's message is, it is good for you to be a part of the Torah. Better than your idolatrous ways. And it is. We know that. Being with God is good. Thus, whenever there was a Torah government on the soil, those people that came into the covenant would have experienced the goodness on some level, at least greater than being a pagan. Now, when one or both of the temples were destroyed, Torah law was eradicated from the land. Jews were sent to exile. The non-Jews, who are part of the covenant, now what? They're not going away. There were Evid Kanani, the Canaanite slaves. There were Gerim of every type. All the fringe of Torah that we don't like to talk about and feel uncomfortable. At one point they were here. And we believe where we are now, they're just gone, disappeared. We were always this. The truth is we weren't. Some were religious, some weren't. Some left, some hopped on. So the biggest issue in understanding the reality, the Torah of today, is to realize the Torah of then. And the miracles that allowed this were of humanity. And those miracles still exist today. So when we see a Jew or a Goy and a this and a that, and we think the world's very status quo, we're actually standing on history of thousands of years of Jewish existence, Ger existence, Evid Kanani existence, Evid Ivri existence, all the Sota existence, Nazarite existence, all the things that make us feel uncomfortable. If we understand the Torah's Nitzchi, like Amnon says, today's reality is much different than we thought. Noahidism is much different than we thought. It's not a cute little system of Ask Noah, buy my book. Not that. It's much more than a buy my book campaign. We're talking about the way the world runs, always did. In Mazel, revelation of Malchus will show the world still runs the same way it always did. And to understand the Mazel, the Malchus of our world today, will only happen when it congregates today like it congregated in the Torah itself. We cannot understand each other today unless we attempt to understand the locked parameters of the written Torah, using the tools of the oral Torah to do it. And that requires the congregation of where we are now. But if we're not trying to understand what happened then through unification today, meaning we say what was then, right? The Goy has his way, the Jew has his way, we're not working together, you stay on your side, I stay on mine, you will never get there. And even if we congregate today and say, I'm a liberal guy, I like you, the Gentiles are great, we get along so well, that will also not work. Because who says the Torah was liberal? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But we must work as the Torah was and work as it is today. Thus, conquering the land is one element of the miracle. To learn Torah properly on this level, every situation, every single story must be isolated and looked at with objective terms. Look at the words. Look at the translation. Character. Everything we have to understand the exchange. Was it allegorical? Was there a big miracle here? Is it slang? The Torah's slang. Is there a code? What do we use to understand the Torah of wherever we are? The entire Torah has the ability and the necessity to be understood as it was. That'll also change our relationships of humanity in our world. That we are a biblical society and we don't even realize it. See, Cain and Abel, when they were created, they knew right away they were a biblical society. First thing they do, they're going to offer offerings to God. I mean, even Cain killing Abel is already biblical. He killed 1/4 of the world's population. Armageddon. Our job is to also realize that we are biblical. That requires understanding the nature of the Torah. Now in our Parasha we have a very interesting little isolated story. Moses and Jethro. The Mukubalim say that Moses was a reincarnation of Abel, Jethro a reincarnation of Cain. Jethro is Moses' father-in-law. Jethro comes back, delivers Moses' sons and his wife, post-revelation, helps Moses set up the Beis Din of Gerim involved, and Jethro wants to go back to his people, his stuff, his place. He is your essential ger. And Moses is saying, don't go back. We'll treat you good, yada, yada, yada. And we have a very intimate exchange of goodbyes between Moses and Jethro. Jethro's name here is Reuel, the friend of God. But let's look at the supernatural quality of their relationship. Let's do a flashback. And look back when Moses took the staff from the house of Jethro. They say the staff belonged to Adam and to Enoch, Hanoch, Noah, I believe Shem also. There's a whole tradition of that staff. It's in Jethro's garden. And Moses was able to free it up, and it had written on it, I believe, names of God. From then on, Jethro and Moses become mates. Moses marries his daughter. And they're intertwined, basically, for the rest of eternity. Now, fast forward again a little bit. 17:6 of Shemos. Moses is told, "Behold, I shall stand before you in the rock of Horeb." The Midrash then takes it literally, right? That I shall stand before you in the rock of Horeb. That there's a concept of the Shekhinah making an impression in the very rock at Horeb. The Midrash then makes a statement, wherever you find the impression of a foot in a rock is the impression of where you will find the Shekhinah, God's presence. The way they're learning this is, what kind of miracle is this? When you learn the basic text, you don't see any miracle at all. But then we fast forward again a little bit, And we find that Moses hits the rock with his staff. And out of that rock comes water. This is a case of how do we understand the miracle? Is this a miracle like David would say in Tehillim, a psalm? A miracle of man and humanity? What is the nature of this miracle? Was there a kruv, man-angel element involved? And here's how we can look at possibly understanding this idea. By the Midrash has the account of the Midrash. There is a rock that has an impression of basically God's foot. How do you even have God's foot in a rock where the Shekhinah is? Moses will hit that rock with his staff. The staff was taken from the house of Jethro. Now we can begin to look at this story. Moses was a kruv. And he has a staff in his hand. A miraculous staff. They say the staff is the angel Matat, which is very similar to in the letters Mem, Tes, Hey, which is very similar to the initial letters Matat, Sar, Hapnim, which is the initial letters Moshe. And Jethro is related. When we start to get into viewing the text in an ultra-spiritual yet practical way, is the footprint in the rock that of a kruv? Was it a miracle? But God doesn't have feet. So in this world, God's presence, which Matat is the angel of the presence. In our world, we must get accustomed to what was going on at the time of the Torah. The biggest revelation is the Torah knew kruvim. Kruvim were part of the Torah. God sanctioned kruvim to guard the way of the tree of life. There were kruvim in the Holy of Holies that made up the Ark of the Covenant. The kruv is a part of Torah reality. And the breadth of kruv in our tradition of Torah, who knows how far it goes. When you get into Kabbalistic literature, you'll hear all about how many people are kruvim, and we never knew. Joseph is a type of kruv. Joseph and Benjamin in their relationship as brothers. Elijah and Enoch. Joshua. Ezra. A lot of men in our history have kruv DNA. Meaning at some point God bestowed upon them the power of basically Mazal. That revelation of the Malchus of above. Now the story is a bit fantastic. We can maybe hear it. Okay, so there were kruvim, and okay, they existed in the camp of Israel. They existed around the temple. They existed in Bereshis when Chanoch was wandering around the world before the flood. But here we're told in Exodus 17:6, God is standing before you in the rock of Horeb. And we should expect to find a rock with a foot imprint to find the Shekhinah. That's the task. And one would just close the book and say, that's a nice idea. Very nice idea. It's a bit cute. God willing, I'll find that rock one day. If there is such a thing. But then, Mazel takes over. What if we found that rock, but it wasn't necessarily Jewish? And it comes from the concept of ger, and Jew working together in an intimacy that you will not quite fathom on a simple level. You go to Tiberias, on the Arbel Mountain. Jethro's tomb is there. It's governed by Druze. In case you don't know who Druze are, a type of, I guess, Islam, right? But it's kosher by terms of, in Israel, they're allowed in the army. They're not considered a threat. And in Islam, they're heretics. Because they believe that Jethro is the Messiah. And there's precedent in Judaism, not to say that Jethro's Messiah, but he's certainly related, as Jethro is a reincarnation of Pinchas, and Pinchas is part of the redemption story, as the Arizal explains. That Pinchas' soul is actually Joseph and Jethro together. So they're not right, but they're certainly not totally in left field. It is Klippa, but that's not the point. Jethro's grave, run by Druze, who by their claim, they are a remnant of the Kenites that were in the land of that time that never just evaporated like we would wish. Descendants of Jethro, Kenites who have lost their way because the Torah never really brought in ger. So Islam came out of basically this part of the land. And you have everyone going their ways. Then you get the sect of Druze, and they're accepted in Israel. And lo and behold, they're governing the gravesite of Jethro. So it's already a bit of a mazel story. And at the spot of the grave, there's a stone about the size of this desk. And in it is the impression of a foot, which they say, this is a stone that Jethro made the impression of his foot. It happened at Sinai, and it was brought to the location of Jethro's grave. So the Druze will say that, and they do say that, and we say, that's a cute story. And then if you ask the Jew to understand the Druze, well, what's with the stone? Bubkus. Yeah, bubkus, but there is the impression of a foot here. I've never personally seen a stone with the impression of a foot, other than this. And in the Jewish world, we have our Midrashim that are, yeah, God put his foot in the stone, and Moses hit the rock, and yeah, Jethro was there with Moses, and then they got together, and they had the staff, and the hand of Moses, all these things. The Jews are talking about it, but they don't believe it. The Druze believe it, but they don't really have the whole story. And I'm saying, we have the precedent in Torah that maybe we don't understand fully because it hasn't been revealed yet. But the Midrash is telling you what happened is that our minds are not able to conceive what the Midrash is saying. We're not really elevated to believe it. But what happens when the Druze and the Jew, i.e. the Ger and the Jew, get together? Maybe, just maybe, the story's true. And when we read, I shall stand before you in the rock of Chorev, is this God stationing the power of Kruv upon his creation? And this is actually one of the times a miracle comes about. Understanding the Torah is about the inside, its contents will be understood by living in the world and the world produced from that Torah. We're living in a biblical world. And we don't understand the world we live in and the world of the Torah. When they coincide and come together, that is when we can possibly realize everything is truly one. Like those people are not, uncomfortable or not, they are ancient Gerim. Our text might be fantastic, but it is Torah text. What happens when the Jew and the Ger get together? Maybe we can begin to understand the context of the Jew and the Ger in the Torah, in today's world, even Moses and Jethro themselves, as our Parasha retold their experience. Maybe the episode of the staff wasn't just something to throw out and something that doesn't make sense. Maybe the episode of God telling Moses, I stand before you in the rock of Chorev, is not just blah, 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 blah. That is the essence of the Torah. It's never saying blah, blah, blah. The Ger is here to say, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? We say blah, blah, blah is what it means. No longer should it say blah, blah, blah. The Torah means something. And that is the essence of the life of Moses. Today's relationships of Ger and Jew can finally begin to get rid of murmuring and understanding the text of the Torah itself on a miraculous level and even within the level of man. The bottom line is very simple. The story of Jethro and Moses, then and today, if we're going to understand the reality we live in and the Torah, we simply need Jew and Ger. We need both Jew and Ger. The Torah, not by an accident, has them intertwined through the entire cover-to-cover experience of Moses' life. Just as it was in the Torah, so it is today. If we're going to find that unity on earth, rest assured it will be done, and the Torah will be understood through the unity and brotherhood of the Jew and the Ger. Thank you very much. Have a great week, and that's all for Parashas Behaloscha.